to be able to talk to you on the other side of the earth, just around this important issue. And so just wanting to talk to you today, particularly, we talked a little bit yesterday about the Chefs Manifesto and what the Chefs Manifesto is and how you can get involved. And so if you weren't there yesterday and you want to find out more about that, go to chefsmanifesto.com and you'll be able to find more information. In regards to the UN Food System Summit, so I just want to talk a little bit about why this year is really critical and what the UN Food System Summit is about. So the Secretary General of the UN last year called for a food system summit. And so this is not a food summit, it's a food system summit to look at how food is part of a system and how it is a potential solution to look at the food system to solve some of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And so the 17 Sustainable Development Goals cover a huge range of issues, and between 2015 and 2030, they're the global agenda for development. And so the UN Food System Summit is really critical for bringing together a conversation around how we can drive forward change to really accelerate action in the next decade. And really seeing food systems as a transformative area for so many parts of the Sustainable Development Goals. And so one of the things that this summit that's unique about the summit is that it's been built in a way to try and encourage and become a people summit, to enable people from all different areas. And that includes chefs, it includes gardeners, it includes scientists, it includes all different types of people. And so what they've done is they've created a range of different platforms to try and make this more accessible, to try and make the conversations bring and draw on many different parts of the food system, and to bring different people into that. And so as part of that, they've created some really interesting elements. They've created a thing called Food System Dialogues. And we're going to be we hosted one in Ireland with GIY and the Chefs Manifesto and World Vision. And we brought together voices from across Ireland to talk about food system issues from an Irish perspective. We're also going to be doing this with chefs, and we're planning in May and June a number of different dialogues around the world. We're also doing something really interesting this year around tied from the Chefs Manifesto thematic areas to really raise the voice of chefs, and it's called the Chef's Pledge. And we're actually surveying chefs around the world around which of the actions in the Chefs Manifesto are most important, most impactful. And that's not to say that all of them are not important, but it's just what are the ones that are going to drive the most change and action in the short term. And so one of the things that we're doing in that is we've surveyed chefs, and there is a survey that's live at the moment, and hopefully the team can drop the survey link in. So if you're a chef and you haven't filled in the Chef Pledge, please join us. We've got chefs from over 20 countries that have already contributed and growing daily, and we want to hear from many more. We're also partnering with a range of organizations that work with chefs as well to really bring this into the conversation. And so this Chef's Pledge is bringing together what are these actions, and then what we're going to do is use dialogues to help us refine how we drive that forward into a pledge that can then be presented by chefs, for chefs, as we come into the summit. So the summit's driving, it's looking at the food system, and it's got many different on-ramps. The other way for people to get engaged, if you want to find out more about the summit, is you can sign up as a food system hero. And food system heroes, there's over 4,000 of them around the world at the moment, and they're basically being kept in the loop on the summit and what's going on. And so you get sent monthly updates with actions that you can take, hearing about what are some of the findings, how you can participate and use your voice. There's lots of forums, there's lots of sessions that are having an impact and a feed in. And so if you have a look at that, please get involved. We're also just in the process of launching a new public engagement campaign with the Food System Summit around the idea of good food for all. And we're asking people to create videos, short videos, which talk about, as a farmer, what you believe good food means to you. As a chef, what do you think good food means to you? And what we want to do is really hear many voices talking about what good food is, and sharing those videos with the hashtag good food for all, online. And so we're going to then create a whole tapestry of different voices sharing about what they see as good food for all. So the summit's happening. There's a lot going on, and it can feel maybe a little overwhelming. But what I would encourage you to do is to look up UN Food Systems Summit, check out the website. If you're on Instagram, check them out, or on Twitter, and follow along. Hear about what's being shared. Look at some of the articles. There's lots of connections to oceans. There's lots of connections to the conversations we're having today, because this is our system, and this is our summit. And so it's a way of kind of using your voices and raising them through the Chef's Pledge, through the dialogues, through Food System Heroes, or even in this Good Food for All campaign. So I really encourage you to check it out and get involved. And hopefully you're inspired by the speakers that we've got today to really jump in there. I want to thank Connor and JB again for their leadership in bringing this amazing discussion and dialogue. Make sure you get online, share it, and expand that. Share the live stream with others that maybe haven't registered so they can join in. And thank you, GOY, for also really hosting the Chef's Manifesto Action Hub in Ireland. So back over to you, JB and Connor. But really excited to see how today goes.
Thanks. Thanks so much for that, Paul. And I'm really interested about making awareness around the UN Food Systems Summit this year, and that we all have a voice in it, you know, which is so important, because it's not often we get an opportunity to put our voices forward to the United Nations around what a better food system looks like, not just here in Ireland, but on a global scale. So it's great that all these opportunities are coming up this year, and I really ask everyone to get involved where they can. And for chefs, there's a link in the chat box to go and pledge on the Chef's Pledge part, which is really important for the chefs as well to have these voices, because we're right stuck in the middle of it.
Yeah, that's not that often, and we've been asked really what we think about all those very important problems. So then we're going to go through straight away our speakers, I guess.
Yeah.
So we have Niall, who just joined us there.
Yeah. So first, a little bit about Niall. So Niall Sabonge is it's hard to keep up with Niall. He's so much going on. So Niall is a chef. He has obviously closed the moment with COVID. He has Claw in the city centre. He has the Seafood Cafe. He brought out the Salty Boy, which is a street truck that travels around Dublin. And he's soon to open the Saltwater Grocery, which is a new kind of food emporium, but all based on seafood. And Niall's business, which we're going to talk about today, is SSI, Sustainable Seafood Ireland. And what that is about from a wholesale point of view is there's full transparency in the fish that Niall sells. And even on his website, you can go and there's a list of all the trawlers that he worked, the shipping boats, that he works with, where they're moored, where they fish from, down to the skippers, all the things that we should know. Like I said yesterday, if this was back about on land, we would know the farmer, we would know where our crops are coming from, or at least we should know. And we don't know that so much in our oceans. And Niall has really shown that can be done. And also, I think, has really put seafood back up there in terms of, you know, how great it is, but how it can be done in a sustainable way as well. Hi, Niall, if you're there, can you?
I can see you. How are you?
How are you? Thanks so much for joining us. How are things?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, good. All things considered, yeah.
You're a busy man.
Yeah, I know. I need my head examined. Fear of failure is a great motivator. So it keeps me going. Like,
brilliant. And I suppose now today, as I said, you have so much going on, but I really wanted to focus today on Sustainable Seafood Ireland, because I think what you do is brilliant from a fishmonger's, a wholesale point of view. As chefs, we don't normally get to work with wholesalers that do what you do. And can you tell us all about the whole idea?
Yeah, well, I suppose, that's exactly it. First and foremost, I'm a chef. Always have been, always will be. And when I first moved back to Ireland, I've been working in Paris, and I've been working in Australia, working in London for years, and I came back, and I was just like, I've always loved seafood. It's often part of my childhood growing up. I'm half Egyptian, so eating Egypt seafood and eating seafood at home is a very regular thing. So I've always loved it. But when I came back, I was just so shocked and horrified that I just couldn't get anything. I couldn't get decent cod, or I couldn't get even just decent cod. Couldn't get. And everything, it was just a really poor selection, 3 or 4 different things, and then when I started to look for things like line caught, it was like, yeah, no, impossibility. And then I wanted to know more about the boats and who's catching it and where they caught it, because we're an island. I felt we should know this, and I wasn't being given the information fast enough. And that's when I started, well, maybe I can do better than this. And I remember the breaking point for me was it was I think it was about 1:30. My fish order hadn't arrived in, typical of a Friday. So I'm clearly in the shits. And the delivery driver came in with this bag of all the fish, all balled up, weighted down in this blue plastic bag. I was going, hang on, I'll come over to you now when I set this table, and I'll check my order, obviously. And he goes, no, it's fine. I took it and just skittled it across the floor like it was a bowling pin, and it slid all the way down the kitchen and smacked against the wall. Now, I tried to climb out through the hatch to literally strangle him. And I, it was just like, that was it. I was going to, I can do better than this, definitely. I can source myself. So I started to source just myself. Like, having SSI was never my intention for it to be a company that supplied other people or be a big wholesaler. But to buy, I needed to be a company for me to do it legally and to be registered and things like that. So I started very, very slowly to supply myself. With a couple of friends who were chefs, kind of went, can I have the same? Or, can I have a little bit of that? That looks amazing. Where'd you get that? And from there, it just grew very, very organically to I suppose, where we are now. And even at the stage right now, we really don't want to get, if anything, we're actually going to get smaller in the coming months rather than getting bigger. So we can take more time to look at what we're doing and just do it really, really well. So the mission very much is to be the best and not the biggest. So I suppose that's where we came from. And that's where we are now. The whole calling a company Sustainable Seafood Ireland is a big name to call it. And I suppose it was as much a mission statement as it was anything else. The first thing that I went looking for was line caught. And unfortunately, there's very little line fishing in Ireland. And it's all in Norway and the northern countries, and they've got a great maritime history and a history for dealing and working with fish, and that's why they have it there. And I was like, oh, surely I can get Irish and be closer to it. But I suppose Providence, when it comes to fish, it's a very tricky kind of thing. And going back centuries, I just finished a project with Trinity looking at where we source our fish from all through the ages, and our fish has always come from the North Sea. So we stopped looking at Ireland as an island on its own and actually ignored the land mass and looked at the water system. So we try and work within the British Isles water system, the fish that swim around and things like that. And the more it's gone on, I suppose the deeper you delve into sustainability, it's like a rabbit hole. It just goes off and goes down and goes down and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So every year and every day, honestly, every day, we're learning new things and trying to improve systems in new ways to be more sustainable and to understand more about not just the fish, but the oceans and the impact the land has on them as well, and the impact that we have on them, and trying to reduce that we can truly stand over and actually really be a sustainable and ethical seafood company. That's where we are.
It's brilliant. And what I'm always interested in is you're dealing directly with small fishing boats. How have they responded? Because I suppose what I find or hear back a lot of times that fishermen get a bad rap in a lot of cases, and especially when you see things like Seaspiracy and so on. But that's these massive factory ships that suck up half the ocean. These guys that you work with in the small boats, family-run businesses, generations of skippers.
Absolutely. They're practicing sustainability well before we even knew sustainability was a word. And the big thing is supposed to Seaspiracy. We're building a new website at the moment, and I've prepared a statement that I'll put up on the website of how I feel about it. And it's not just my opinion, I suppose. I've kind of spent the last kind of couple of weeks working with some of the academics from Trinity, working with the Marine Institute, talking to other kind of marine biologists to really get a clearer picture of what's going on. The massive difference between not only what SSI does, SSI is very much about small scale fisheries, but in Ireland and in Europe, we're small scale fisheries. You know, now there are massive big trawlers out there, but, you know, someone was asking me, well, how do I know if my fish and chips is sustainable? It's like, well, if it's a fiver, it's not. Simple as, you know. So dealing with small scale fishers, that is sustainable. And I said it's generational. Like, we were off scallop fishing last week, and the skipper on the boat is 6 generations scallop fishing in the same area. But these guys that fish by Kirk. So it's like, it couldn't be more low impact. It's, you know, it's a rake that he's drawing by hand, hand over hand stuff. You know, it's very heavy, hard work, and, you know, 6 generations. But prior to him, his great grandfather would have been on the Galway hookers, and they fish for scallops on a hooker. So I don't know if anyone knows how to sail, but like, if you want to back sail and move a boat forwards and backwards to be able to fish like that, the skill and craftsmanship and, you know, the understanding of the marine environment is incredible. And these guys are, you know, they're managing their stocks because they want to manage their stocks for their generations ahead. You know, so small scale fishers, most fishermen are very, very ethical and try to work as sustainably as they can. They're limited by the technology of their time, to use an Iron Man phrase. You know, they are limited.
I'm presuming, are things getting harder and harder for them because of quotas, legislations, the less stocks available? Because
the quotas themselves aren't the issue. There's plenty, like, if you join all the quotas together, there's plenty of fish going to the ground. It's the division that we get in our own waters, and the authority to be able to control our own waters the way that we should control them. You know, we don't manage, like, we can manage our fisheries better, massively better, especially like the crab and lobster fisheries should be protected, and, you know, use the Canadian models for it. But even now, you know, all the boats that kind of come in and, you know, they go to juvenile grounds and to spawning grounds, whereas Irish boats just don't go there. It's not written that they can't, but they don't, because they know themselves, you know, you don't want a spawning fish. The meat content of it's going to be very low. You don't want to fish that. So, you know, there's, you know, a financial reason why you don't want to fish those things. And there's also a sustainable reason why you don't want those. So there's a lot of logic there. It's an extremely difficult industry to be in. You know, salt has to be in their blood. And the more I learn, the more I get to know them individually as people, you can really, you know, it's a vocation. You know, nobody goes to sea, you know, without really loving what they do and being proud of what they do. At the end, it's hunting as well. You know, it's, you know, these are wild animals that they're out hunting. So it's an extremely strong job, and something that I'm very, you know, I'm really proud that we can have that connection with the fishermen. As you said a minute ago, if you walk into McDonalds, you're going to see a photograph. Or you walk into Super Valley, you're going to see a photograph of the farmer. We never see the man at sea, besides Captain Birdseye or something like that. You know, and these are real jobs.
And I think it's a bit like on land as well, isn't it? Like, there's so much greenwashing, so much goes on. And I know, like last year or previous, not only last year, there's a lot of call outs to supermarkets, how they're allowed to use the word fresh and how they're have a tricolour when it's not. It's come in from frozen, it's been defrosted. You know, God knows actually where it originated from.
Which is crazy. Like, and like, if you look, like, the UK have standards that we don't follow. In the UK, you know, in fish and chip shops, you go in and it has to be fresh, or else say previously frozen. In Ireland, you go in and it says, you know, it always says fresh cod. It's never fresh cod. It's frozen at sea on a massive super trawler, frozen years ago, sailed all around the planet, frozen on board and shipped. It's absolute muck that's tearing apart the ocean. And, you know, you should say it.
Absolutely. And from a custom point of view, there's no flavour to it either. I mean, to eat these, which is mainly cod or a haddock, these tiny fillets with very little flesh, you know, taste of nothing. And I think you hit the nail on the head. If you're going to go into a place and buy something for 3 or 4 quid, or I don't know what McDonald's sells a burger at.
Yeah, you have to
ask yourself the question, like.
You have to ask yourself the question. And then, like, I mean, I suppose there's the other part. Like, you know, I was in Lidl the day, and I spotted there was wild salmon in the freezer. It's like, interesting. So it was coho salmon, obviously from, you know, like North America, far North America, but it has the big MSC, you know, Marine Stewardship Council logo, which is sometimes known worldwide as a really good standard. But like, when we look at sustainability, like, I mean, is it sustainable catching a fish, you know, that far away and then freezing it and wrapping it in plastic and then shipping it across the planet? Is that sustainable? No. I mean, just because a fishery is approved, it doesn't mean the methods around it are or should be improved. So it's tricky to consumer, like.
Absolutely, and I think you hit the nail on the head there as well, and not just in Ireland, but I know as chefs, for me personally, like as in farm fish, as in farm salmon, so we've never used it, we never will use it, and we like to, you know, in some way educate our consumers as about why and the not. How, like the fish you do is so fresh, it's seasonal, it's, how have you seen a turn? Like obviously your customers know what to do, you're busy out, I see the truck is queues out the door as well as the wholesale. So do you find now that the shift has changed, that people are now looking to try lesser known species, learn more about the seasons?
Yeah, people, we have this thing bet into us that Irish people don't want different things. And, you know, chefs and owners are always nervous. Oh no, Mary likes her cod. Jesus, you couldn't put pollock on there now. That's only a cheap fish. That doesn't exist. The Irish people, we are well traveled, well educated. You know, we like food. We know loads about it. We're not looking at, you know, we're not just post-famine. You know, people love seafood. And yeah, like I've never found a problem putting a megrim or putting a gurnet on the menu. If anything, they'll sell first. They'll, you know, like me, a witch or a white sole would sell faster than a black sole would. And people love it and they're delighted with it. I mean, the fear is literally only our own fear. You know, and like really to be sustainable in seafood, the biggest thing, obviously besides buying our small scale fishers, is to eat more, varied species. Stay away from, you know, you can't put the strain on 5 or 6 species all the time. There's so many other things there. But also the farm fish, I know you're not a big fan of farm fish, but we have to give the industry an opportunity to improve and to grow. We can't expect the ocean to keep feeding the population of the planet that's growing as fast. 3 billion people depend on seafood as a primary source of protein to eat. These are poor people that need this food to eat. If we don't start farming and start farming better, we will deplete. You know, like it's not going to be like, you know, seriously 2024 empty oceans, but you know, we need to look at it. There's a lot of really exciting things going on land at the moment. Land reared, you know, salmon. We bring in yellowtail kingfish, which is land reared, and I mean, it's reared so well, and the waters are so good, and not fed any chemicals. But you know, we don't look for wild cows. We don't look for wild sheep. I presume when it first started, you know, people would have rathered wild this and wild that, but they've become accustomed to eating it. So I think we need to give the industry an opportunity to improve, and it is improving. I think dramatically, year on year, there's changes and there's developments and things like that.
I think that's really interesting because farm fish, it's a whole other debate. There are new, more sustainable ways of farming. And hopefully that sector is going to grow more, because the older sector of farming, as we know, you know, has so much going wrong with it in terms of pollutants and so on and so forth. But you're right, to maintain a crop as we would on land, we've got to look at more sustainable ways of farming as well. And I think it's really interesting, especially for chefs now that are here today, is that exactly what you said. It's our responsibility as chefs too in our restaurants not to just rely on the usual suspects, you know, whatever you're using, cod, hake, you know, haddock, salmon. There's a lot more to seafood about that. There's a lot more to fantastic tasting fish. And chefs need to step up to the plate as well and start to promote that and use that and talk to their consumers about it.
And also the size, the grade of fish as well. We need to move away from always just wanting, you know, fillets this thick and, you know, 7 kilo turbots and things like that. You know, we need to look at all the other sizes. And like, you know, we're chefs, you know, we need to be clever. We need to understand that not all fish are that size. You know, and that's one of the things that small scale fishers find difficult. If they go out, they're not going to catch one species at one size. They're going to catch a multitude of things, and they export so much of our fish. Another big conversation, but we export so much of it because we can't find a market for it here. Nobody wants a medium or a small haddock. Everyone only wants a 7 to 1. You know, like, but if you're clever about it and you use it, like, I mean, the consumer is not going to mind. If it's fresh, it's going to be delicious. It doesn't matter how big it is. You know, obviously, you know, we don't catch tiny skittery fish because our nets don't allow for it. You know, and that's also the importance of knowing, you know, where your fish coming from and what gear is on the boat and what nets they're using on the boat. You know, what gauge is it and things like that, like, which is so important to it all.
And there's a question in here, what about organic farmed salmon?
I like organic farmed salmon. So many people don't, and I think what they've done, like Maui and guys in Clare Islands, what they've done in recent years, it's getting better, and their farming practices are better. The low density. They've stopped giving them the steroids and things to get rid of the sea lice. You know, people talk about the sea lice, but sea lice is just a natural occurring thing on fish. And when the salmon passes from the sea to the river, the fresh water kill the lice. So for years they were feeding the salmon, in their feed, antibiotics to get rid of the lice. Whereas now they're actually bringing out these big tankers out beside them, and they bring the fish out of the sea and they put them into fresh water, and then the fresh water back into the sea, and that gets rid of the lice. So it's a much more lower impact way. But still, and now they're using they're using different fish species, they're catching different fish species and bringing like the likes of it's gone out of my head, and other species of fish. They're bringing in and putting the fish into the pen, and those fish eat the lice off the fish and things like that. So they're doing loads of great things to try and improve the industry. And the public are going to want salmon. So we need to work with that. People always want bass. You know, it's just a popular thing in the menu. We can't just, it's not just going to be eradicated overnight. But the bass farming is really good. The Spanish farms farming turbot are excellent. Their practices are second to none. The people we're expecting our first sample of land-reared salmon in hopefully the next kind of month or so. And I'm really excited to see what that is and how it is when it comes in. I think if we ignore the industry and don't buy anything off it, but then it's never going to improve. And if it's chef-led and if we're demanding better, the consumer will get better as well. We've a louder voice, I feel, than the consumer has.
No, absolutely, and I think you're right. Like we have to look at better, more sustainable farming, and to keep the stocks where the demand is. But I'm also interested in knowing, like, okay, I'm cooking a long time. I'm 30 years, whatever, as a chef, and what I've noticed, like, okay, I've always lived on the coast, and predominantly in my younger days as well, I've always worked in kitchens along the coast. So seafood always played a major part in what we did. And I always remember, like, when you got like turbots or brills, or these were these huge fish that you don't see anymore. And like, is that down as well to demand, that we constantly want the same kind of fish, and we're...
Yeah, it is the demand. Now we see quite a lot of big fish. A lot of the boats we fish are seine boats, Scottish seine net boats. So they will catch the bigger fish just because of the nature of their nets and their gauge and etc. And you will see them, like, I think we had a 17 kilo turbot in recently, which is, and it's called the king of the sea for a reason, because they are. But yeah, if everyone wants them, they're, obviously demand, so supply and demand, there aren't, it's not like they're that bountiful. But also an awful lot of it gets exported as well. You'll get a much better price for a large turbot in Rungis in Paris than you will in Quebec, for sure.
And is that again because, I'm presuming, as an island nation, we don't need half as much fish that we should or could?
No, we don't, and like we wouldn't be willing to pay it though either. Like, for example, in Zeebrugge, in the Netherlands, they buy an awful lot of Irish fish. But I think like at Christmas or just after Christmas, they're buying, I think, black soles, 400 to 600 for about €29 a kilo. Now that's into like the fish market. So they would have been selling it out again at an extra, whatever, 10, 12%. So, there's no way a chef in Ireland's going to buy black sole for 34 quid a kilo, and then...
Oh, that's huge, yeah.
Yeah, it's just not going to happen, but they like their fish more and they're willing to spend more money on it. They have a great appreciation, I suppose, that it is wild, and, if you want the best, you're going to have to pay for the best, but until we get out of our heads that fish should, that cod should only cost a tenner a kilo, it just can't, it's not viable for the fishermen, just financially to be, because they only get a couple of euros a kilo. Like, what's the point?
Absolutely. And it's the same argument that we have with farmers on land, like where they're growing vegetables and you see them in the supermarket for the low cost price and so on. And I think chefs have more connection to, food on land than they do to food in the ocean. They understand they're going to pay more for an Irish grown vegetable, that tastes far better. And I think that's the thing that chefs need to understand around our oceans is work within seasons, work with what the fishermen are telling you that they're going out to catch, as opposed to going, I want whatever, cod, salmon, hake, you know what I mean? Listen and connect to the fishermen as you have done, Niall.
Yeah. We're actually working on I'm working with Trinity at the moment, helping them trying to put together a seasonality chart. So for the last 2 years, we've been kind of looking at the fish coming in, and not only when it's best to eat, but when it's in roe, when it's not in roe. And like the roe of the fish changes quite a lot, and we even see species coming in twice a year with roe and things like that. So it is tricky, but you need to have that kind of you need to have that connection with your fishmonger, you know. And if they don't know the answers, you've got the wrong fishmonger.
Yeah, you're right. I saw that project, Food Smart Dublin, which is really cool. And I think it's really going to help and promote what fish and how, you know, when to eat it and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. And also using the whole, you know, like with Food Smart, we were trying to use the lesser cuts, the lesser species, so that they can become popular, like they have been before. So it was really interesting to use, you know, to do that, like, you know, and I suppose that's the other thing that as chefs we need to do. We need to look at our food waste, you know, which obviously you're a champion of, and trying to use the whole animal all the time, because, you know, we're putting bits of fish in the bin that just shouldn't be going into the bin at all. Like, they're just delicious. But again, it's up to us to put them on the menu and make them popular in, you know, in the consumer's mind, and then that's what the shift will be. Like, there's a lot of responsibility, I think, the chef community to, you know, to be the instigators to make the change.
No, absolutely. And Niall, thanks so much. It's so interesting, and I hope that the chefs that are on today kind of can take away from that, you know, to not say it, but like step up. You know what I mean? But, you know, look at what you put on your menu.
Just don't be afraid to don't be afraid to do it. You know, it's like, it's delicious. You know, just if it's fresh, it's delicious. The consumer will know it very, very quickly behind you. You'd be surprised. Like,
absolutely. And Niall, thanks. I know how busy you are. Thanks a million for all.
Oh, my pleasure.
Great to talk to you. Talk again soon.
Thanks.
Best luck with the new opening.
Yeah, cheers.
Another one.
You're a gent. Okay.
Brilliant. Thanks a million. Cheers.
All right, so that was so insightful. That was great to hear from someone who knows what's being a chef, a fishmonger, and knows so much about fishery and sustainable fishery. Like, it's very, very interesting, and all these controversial views on fish farming as well. Obviously, that was big eye-opener to me too. Like, you know,
it's brilliant and it's eye-opening. And I think, as Niall said, like, if you know, if you're buying fish from a fishmonger who's not working with seasons or doesn't know what's coming up, or you probably got the wrong fishmonger. You know what I mean? And there's other people like Niall in the country that are really setting a standard now for wholesale. You know, and obviously retail, because a lot of them have pivoted over COVID to sell cash to homes and delivery in boxes and all as well. So really interesting.
Conor, we were hoping to get Grace O'Sullivan on now, but don't see her logging in as yet. So maybe we'll jump straight away to Finn.
Yeah, I see there's a message from Laura saying Grace is having trouble logging in at the moment.
Yeah.
Oh no, she's coming in there now. No, she's there now, Louis.
Yeah. Oh, they're perfect. Great timing. Morning, Grace.
Oh, good morning. How are you?
You made it.
I made it. I'm
such a busy woman.
Greetings from Brussels.
Greetings from Waterford then.
Good. I see you have nice sunshine.
Yeah, it's great. Like, finally a bit of sunshine for our gardens here in Grow HQ.
Beautiful.
So, I'm so pleased, and we all thrilled to have you on board for that discussion. I can see you have all the SDGs behind you, all the all the right boxes. So if people might not know you and know what you're all about, like here, like obviously I live in Tramore, I know all about you and your great work, and so tell us. So you're a Green MEP representing the south of Ireland. Kind of maybe before to go to that, maybe talk to us a bit of your love for the sea and the ocean, how that came up with.
Well, first, thank you very much for the opportunity to be with Grow HQ and with all of you, and it's brilliant. And look, JB, I'm from Tramore, so I grew up literally beside the sea. Like from my house to the pier in Tramore was just 2 minutes run. And so I feel my whole life has been informed by the sea. And like we had a little fishing boat in the summer in the pier in Tramore. And, you know, I'm from a big family, 5 brothers and 2 sisters. So we were members of the RNLI, the lifeboat and sea and cliff rescue from a young age. And I remember even in the old days, we had a little engine. You'd have to pull the cord of the seagull engine and going out into Tramore Bay. And just even when I was older, I could do that on my own, and just putting down a little feather mackerel line and catching mackerel. And then, you know, in the evenings, we'd, even if I wasn't fishing myself or some of the family, we'd spend our time in the pier and we'd buy directly, or we'd be given more like it, fish from the local fishermen coming in. And even in those days, JB, the fishermen used to bring their boats in the summer up onto the beach in Tramore and sell the fish directly from their boats on the beach. And I was a lifeguard there for 5 years, so I used to see the Kylies and the different fishermen coming in, selling directly to the people. Yeah,
I go to the pier almost every day, and I tell you, there's no fish to be bought there anymore. Which is a big shame.
Yeah, it's a real big shame, and I think in some regards we're going backwards instead of forwards. Yeah. Because there's nothing nicer than buying from the producer, from the boat, or from the farm. Or, you know, like I lived in Holland for years, and they had farm shops. So you would go into the farm itself, and they had like a little area where they were selling milk or cheese that they were producing or whatever. And you see some of that in Ireland as well, where people are selling directly from the farm. So for me, growing up in Tramore and knowing Tramore, like the more that we can buy local and buy from local producers and suppliers, the better we are at sustaining our community. And not to mind the fact that you don't have to take a load of packaging or stuff, you know. Like in the old days, they used to just wrap the fish in the newspaper.
Yeah.
You know, so I know there's issues around health and that, but you know, you can bring your own box or your own container and buy directly. I think that's the best.
And if you get it straight from the producer or the fisherman, like it cannot be fresher, so you just bring to your own fridge and
exactly. And you'll remember if you put a fresh mackerel onto the hot oil, it literally curves up, and it's beautiful.
And it just tastes something different as well, like.
Exactly, and you know, the Blah has an international heritage now, the water Blah. So like a fresh cooked mackerel and a fresh Blah is, I mean, you won't beat it. It's the best of food.
Well, no, I moved to Tramore like about 15 years ago, and I'm converted. So after growing in Tramore, you were well involved for 20 years with Greenpeace, I believe.
Yeah, so I was very inspired by the work of Greenpeace, and I always say the green is for the ecology and the plants and nature, and the peace is for peace and justice, that we as a community, be it in Tramore or Ireland or us as international citizens, global citizens, that we really, for me, the greatest joy is when we can work together in collaboration and communication and live together and not destroy the planet that we're living on from a militaristic perspective. So the green was the environment, the peace was the peace and justice. So I went to sea with Greenpeace in 1983, and I spent 10 years at sea. So all over the world, Antarctica, Arctic, all over. And then
For the little story, I believe you were on the Rainbow Warriors when
when
the French went to bomb it.
Yeah, the French bombed the boat and killed one of my crew members. You know, yeah, exactly. Actually, it was the French government at the time. Under it was Francois Mitterrand gave the go ahead. So you're absolutely right. It was a particular government, and they didn't want Greenpeace highlighting some destructive testing of nuclear bombs in the Pacific Ocean. So so I was a crew member on the Rainbow Warrior, and then you know, we campaigned on all kinds of issues, from air quality to biodiversity loss. So the great whales, we campaigned to protect the largest of whales from becoming extinct, the blue whale. And now off the coast of Tremor, you see off Dunmore East, off the southeast coast, you see the migratory pattern of the great whales, fin whales, and you also have the humpback whales. But even, you know, I got a message during the week. Actually, I just arrived back to Brussels, and I got a message to say there's dolphins in Tremor Bay. So in our bay, you know, so that was our work, protecting nature. And yeah, it has inspired and kept me going and kept me on this pathway for many decades now, as like an activist. Even if I'm in politics, or whether I'm in Tremor leading a nature walk, for me it's all about being actively positive and progressive about the direction that we humans go in.
Yeah. So from Greenpeace, you went to politics, so you kind of stay into the activist world, but try really make a change from the above, really, I believe.
It's really interesting you say that, because you know, I believe the best politics is the politics where it's engaging with everyone. So it's from above, below, beside everyone. It's an interconnectedness. And so I went into politics because I was working in T-Bay in the surf center in Tremor, and helping with coaching surfing, but also barista in the cafe. I never got the artist ways of doing the fancy coffees, but I was working there.
We could give you a few lessons here, like, you know.
Perfect. And now Molly is there, and she's doing a brilliant job. Yeah. But I was working there, and I had a phone call, a cold call, like very unexpected, from Eamon Ryan, the leader of the Green Party, who asked me to join the Green Party. And that was in late 2013. And so I would align Green Party policies and Green Party vision very much with the work I had been doing for many decades with Greenpeace. And so after a lot of consideration, I decided to become a member of the party. And then I stood and became a senator in the Oireachtas, in the Irish Parliament. Yeah. And then I saw that politics is all about the people. The politics, the best work I did was the work that was inspired from, and it still is, the Fridays for Future, from all of the activists who contact me, and they contact me all the time, is particularly since Seaspiracy. I've been getting huge amount of contact, and people saying, you know, you must do more. And I'm saying, I will continue doing everything I have been doing for the last 30 years. So politics is, you hear in the newspaper and the media often the negative sides. You will never hear the good news stories. You always hear the negatives. And I feel from my few years in politics that if you engage on the issues that are important for me in terms of the environment and healthy food and healthy air and that, and work on those, and I don't get involved too much in the negative politicking if I can avoid it. So I just try to stay on course and push for legislation like the microbeads, microplastic legislation, where I use my history and my experience to help to educate and allow people to see why we need to protect the oceans, and why we need legislation, and why we need regulation, and why we need guidelines to protect the sea and the ocean, not only for biodiversity, but also for food and for and human consumption. And now I'm here in the European Parliament, and I'm on the PESH committee, and PESH, as you know, stands for fisheries. You know, and I'm fighting all of the time to try to allow, and even here in the European Parliament, to get people to recognise that if we don't have healthy seas, we don't have healthy fish, we don't have fish. And to allow people make that connection, that it isn't just about production and intensive fisheries and bringing more and more and more fish to shore. No, it's about sustainability, and that's my fight here in the Parliament.
Yeah, so good. You talking about all that. Like, there's lots of confusions and lots of talks, and the media and social media has even worse done a lot of presumptions on how the European quotas were decided and then rolled out, and by then all the problems of discarding fish. And so can you maybe from within kind of try to explain to us a little bit how those decisions been taken, and how come those quotas are not more localized, maybe, or more seasonal, or more targeted to more sustainable fishing and types of fishing and types of boat going out?
Yeah. So firstly, when we think of the European Union, you should think there's three main institutions. There's the European Commission, and the European Commission come up with they're the ones who prepare the proposals on a year-to-year basis as to how much fish can be taken. So what is under what they call the maximum sustainable yield.
Yeah.
So if we look at the science and all the data that the European Commission get from the researchers and the scientists, they tell year by year what we can still manage to fish sustainably. And they come up with the figures. Then it goes to the European Council, which is the member states. So we have 27 member states now. And each of those, they jostle between themselves as to how much quota they want. And then you have the European Parliament, and we're the ones, and in the Green Group in the European Parliament, we're constantly talking about, you cannot take out more than is in there, or that will reproduce over time. So we have to think in terms of sustainability. So it's the Commission comes out with the proposal of how much is allowed, and then the member states jostle between themselves as to how much they want for themselves. And what happens in some cases, and this is where the problem lies, and this is why the term overfishing is you're hearing it more and more, because if countries fight for more quota than is sustainable, and that happens, and there's like a big negotiations, and you hear about it, you know, that the European Parliament or the European Commission and the European Council are meeting through the night to decide on the quota. But if the member state manages to push for more quota, so more fish than is really sustainable, then that creates a problem. And that's what happens. Yeah. So people want more and more. The other problem we have is that how it's distributed. So Ireland gets quota for different species, and then the government, the Minister from Agriculture, who is Charlie McConnell now, he distributes the quota around the country to the different fishing organizations. And that has to be done fair and equitable. So there should be no favoritism. It needs to be completely transparent. And that's what we're saying all the time in these meetings. Don't do them behind closed doors. Let's see who's fighting against sustainability. Let's see it. So that's how it happens. The Commission comes up with the quota, and what they call the total allowable catches, and then the member states fight to take their share of that.
Yeah, that kind of clarified a little bit more how the whole system works and where that system can go wrong and does go wrong, obviously, because we've seen.
Yeah.
So this, yeah.
And now, and more so with Brexit, but we can talk about that in a minute, because now Britain leaving the European Parliament makes it more complex again.
Yeah. Just talk about Brexit. How does Brexit change Irish fishing?
Okay, so so now because the UK has left the European Union, it becomes what in the European terms is called a third country. Yeah. So Norway is a third country, and Norway collaborates and discusses every year with the European Commission about quota levels. Mm-hmm. And Britain now, because they've left, it means that the European Commission has to negotiate with the UK about fish and how much fish that the UK are taking in their own waters, and then because these are migratory species in many cases, the fish don't know boundaries. So then because in Ireland, for instance, we would have caught a large amount of our mackerel in UK waters. Yeah. And also prawn in UK waters. So now we have to ensure that we have some kind of a quota agreement whereby we can be compensated for that loss. Mm-hmm. One, by numbers of fish, but also the big talk here in the European Parliament at the moment is about the Brexit Adjustment Reserve Fund, because the fishermen will need, and the fisherwomen will need, to have some compensation for their loss. So this is on the big scale. So Brexit is a big problem for Ireland, but also in terms of the land bridge to export Irish fish produce from Ireland across to the continent. So we're going to have to look at how to do that efficiently, because these are perishable goods as well. But in the end, JB, it comes back to, can we do better locally? Yeah. So how can we support the local producers and and how can we convince consumers to buy local, but also buy in season? And that we look at our relationship with food, and we look at how we can really work towards sustainability, so that the food that's been produced in your gardens, sold in GIY, we need more of that, these types of initiatives. And we need more pioneers like Michael Kelly and people like that, many people who were with Michael in the beginning, and many others in Ireland, that are recognizing that if we produce and sell locally, it's less complex. The consumer knows that the food they're eating they know who's caught it almost. Yeah. And that's always going to be the best. And that's how it used to be. There was more relationships. So we need to see more support for, fish shops, for fish producers. People, you have, I know Niall Sabongi on the webinar, and people like Pat Hartley in Tremor, who sells around the country now. And we need to look, if we are going to genuinely work towards sustainability, we have to look at breaking some of the food supply chains, and start to operate on a local basis, a national and a European basis.
What you're really saying is, just by informing, obviously, the global public on those issues and how for them to get a better way, but as well on to legislate that as well, be sure, and to help the smaller, more sustainable fishermen, and then maybe, I don't know, but maybe penalize or not helping as much the bigger fleets.
Exactly. So I think people should look very much to buying local, but also look at the labeling on your fish. Where is it coming from? Is it, you know, when they talk about salmon, is it wild salmon, or is it's most likely it's aquaculture? How is it being produced? You know, if it means paying a little bit more, and this is where we need to look at subsidizing good food over intensively produced or caught foods. And we also have to have transparency so the consumer can see where the fish is coming from. So you in GIY, when you're buying fish, that you know where it's coming from. I think
I would know the names of the fisherman, and I would know what you would have for breakfast as well. So
exactly. But if you go into some of the large retail outlets in Tramore, or not in Tramore, but around the country, and look at the labeling, and that's what we're legislating. We're working really hard here on the legislation to make sure that consumers can make good choices. Because
I found as a consumer, if I go to a supermarket or if I go to a shop, I can't find sustainable fish to buy.
It's very, it's very, that's why you're better going to the local producer.
Yeah.
Because even when you go to the supermarket, you know, even like you look at all of the packaging in itself, all of the plastic packaging, which is creating, which is also leading into the problem of plastic pollution as well. But it is, so I think people are starting to look at their diets, they're looking at the food intake. I think people are becoming more flexitarians, so they're starting to reduce the amount of meats that they're eating, and they're looking more towards, you know, a more vegetable, different types of a grain diet, a more balanced diet.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we will see, is that people, when you give people choice and when you give them affordability, then people will make the right choice. And I think all of David Attenborough and all of these great pioneers are showing that we have to respect the oceans, and we have to respect the way that we're getting our food to make sure it's sustainable into the future.
Grace, it was very, very, very good to have you on the webinar. Like very, very inspiring lady, yeah. And it's good to see that politics is not completely detached to the voice of people, as people could think, you know. And the voice of people is up there, and does change what's happening in the world. Like,
yeah.
So
thank you very much.
Thanks, Minion. And I hope we talk to you soon.
Thank you. See you soon.
Thanks.
Bye. Thanks. Good luck.
Cheers. And that was really inspiring. And I think politics plays a huge part in our food system. And
it does, yeah.
have a voice like Grace in Brussels, you know, fighting for sustainability is brilliant. You know, you could listen to her all day. I think it's fascinating and makes you feel a bit more comfortable that people like Grace are now involved in politics at a European level and really watching out for what needs to be done, you know, because politics does run a food system, and it's important that we have the right voices there. Absolutely brilliant. So we're a little bit over, but that's fine, because it's...
Sorry, blame me now.
Not at all. Look at we you know, everyone is so interested. We talk all day. So our next speaker is Finn van der. So those who might know Finn, she is based up in Donegal. Finn has her fingers in many pies, so to speak. She's a marine scientist, marine biologist. She's a chef, an author, and also an ambassador for Clean Coasts. And Finn, the reason I invited Finn on today, was delighted she came on, was because Seaspiracy, as we know, has blown up everywhere. You know, if you haven't seen it, watch it. But I always find with documentaries, no matter what the documentary is based on, it's one vision of a topic. And I think that other voices need to be heard rather than just one voice on a documentary. And Finn posted a video probably over a week ago now on her views on Seaspiracy, and it just ballooned. There's about 35,000 views already. It just, and rightly so, because it explains more around Seaspiracy, explains more around what Finn herself has witnessed and what her work is. So delighted, Finn, to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, no, I feel like I said it in the video as well, but one of my favorite things about the movie, good, bad, or indifferent, the actual content was the fact that this conversation is happening now and happening in a much more public way. So I guess thank you for having me anyway, another chance to talk about it, which is absolutely brilliant. But and one of the reasons I love I guess the particular audience that we have at this moment is so my background, as Connor's kind of said, is I'm a marine biologist. I studied earth and ocean science, the water and the rocks, and then I did a master's in marine biology to study the fish, just to try to get the whole picture. And when I came out of my master's, which is who knows how many years ago now, I was completely just depressed about the state of the oceans, the lack of interest, awareness, and just kind of like what we had studied was so dark. So in the years after, I actually just felt like what was the fastest way to have an impact, and it actually seemed to be a chef. So I retrained after college, became a chef, and then saw, like, literally when you're like helping to control the food that's going in people's mouths, the packaging that's on that food, that at the time seemed like literally the fastest way to implement some kind of change. And then obviously to write about it then and write a cookbook and things like that to talk about how to be more sustainable. But the really exciting thing, I guess, is to have this conversation now, because in the last few years I have gone back to working in marine science, finding a way to do it without killing fish en masse, which is what it always feels like to be a marine biologist behind the scenes. And I guess, first of all, even just going off the kind of the chat and stuff that Niall was having earlier, when we were doing our degree, we had this, I remember it so distinctly, this very first lab in the very first week where we opened a book and it was a picture of all these different types of shellfish. And I was sitting across from a Spanish guy and he kind of went, huh, and he was laughing to himself. And I was like, oh, what's so funny? And he was like, I have eaten everything on this page. I have eaten one of every single one of these things. And to even the most kind of avid Irish marine student, we hadn't heard of half of them. So I just thought that in itself was fascinating. So obviously the idea of, I do believe, same as Niall said, that Irish people have a varied palate and, you know, are definitely eager to kind of diversify the way they eat. But it was just so interesting to see what was so ingrained in him versus what we were used to. And I guess, yeah, just, I mean, obviously just with the time and stuff that we have to talk about kind of the movie and a little bit more specifically stuff that might be useful to you guys, or I guess kind of relevant also to chefs and things as well, was the most depressing part of the movie for me was that the information was not new. So obviously probably you've seen since, and if you guys haven't watched it yet, or I would definitely still say watch it, but in the weeks since it's released, there are a couple of different papers that were quoted that were actually refuted years ago already. So that obviously about that very grim no fish in the sea in I think 10 years or something like that, which isn't true. But other than that, all the kind of stuff talk about just basically everything, even kind of the focus on the dolphin trade in Japan. Like there was a whole other movie already about that years ago called The Cove, which went into way more detail, was much more, I think, journalistic style as opposed to this kind of ad hoc thing that we saw in Seaspiracy. And that I think is really depressing. So that's why I say it's really, really wonderful that we're having this conversation now. But then as a scientist, it's shocking to me that this is shocking to people, because this is what we were looking at already 10 years ago in terms of like reduction of stocks and kind of the whole thing about, you know, something is caught in one place, shipped to another country, and then, you know, sent back to the place where it was actually caught in plastic. So that I think is the first kind of takeaway. And then the second thing I would kind of just urge people to say is, I think one of the things, especially while we're at home and we're in lockdown and we are trapped in our house, we can watch something like a documentary like this and we can take it as fact, you know, in very attractive graphics and everything, you know, you see all these different statistics, and I think you would assume, yeah, okay, so this must be true if it's being presented to me in this way. So while fact checking can be kind of boring, obviously, I would just say, once you've watched something like that, especially if the information seems kind of sensational, to just go out and have a little look online, and have a look, even if you aren't a scientist. And I can understand that scientific jargon could fry anyone's head, including me, unless I've had a coffee, is you can even have a look at the papers that they're talking about and what there will be. And again, for any chefs and stuff as well, just to know for yourself, there's a little piece at the start of a scientific paper called an abstract, and that is going to give you an in plain English summary of what the paper is about. So as opposed to also just, and I know I'm saying this as someone who made a reaction video, but as opposed to also just looking at how other people are talking about it, you can actually see the papers and things that they're quoting. And then you can also see, was this a peer-reviewed journal? Did other scientists back this up? Which I think is just really interesting. How do you, sorry, someone just asked a question there. As a marine biologist, do you source scientific papers? Do you know, I might just answer questions at the end. I'm bad at multitasking. Yeah, so I would definitely say have a look at things like that. Many of the universities in Ireland make, there are kind of platforms where you can have papers available for free. And then usually if you are Googling papers, the ones that are available for free will come up where you can see that it's PDF tab, so you're going to be able to view it right away without having to pay for it. It could be a whole other topic, the fact that I think that these should be available for free, especially when half the time the scientists writing them aren't being paid to do it. So, but that's a whole other topic. I guess the next thing as well would be just talking about some of the biases and things in the movie. I think I find this the most irksome is the polite word for it. So obviously having studied kind of, and again, kind of what Niall touched on earlier, like looking at the European super trawlers, there was very little, they didn't touch on, as far as I could tell, they touched very, very little on America, and very, very little on Europe, and absolutely not on South America at all. And I would say that in that movie, there was a particularly anti-Asian sentiment, which, and it was wonderful to see a lot of Asian marine biologists have kind of come out against that movie, and that kind of view as either you're the evil person overfishing or you're the victim. But when I was really confused about that in the movie, and I was kind of going, why haven't we talked more about Europe? Why haven't we talked about America? Why was South America left out completely? And then I did just think it was very interesting to then go and look at, okay, well, where did the funding come from? So obviously it was funded by an American organization, and I think there was possibly some European ties as well. And it's not to say, like, realistically, when anyone is making a movie or doing anything, there's always going to be some form of bias. There's always going to be some form of agenda. So me personally, what would be my two agendas whenever I'm creating anything? Obviously, as a marine scientist, I have an interest in conservation, but as a human being, I also have an interest in earning a living and you know, surviving in my life. So I'm always obviously towing that balance between, maybe I want to work with a company, but okay, is there kind of sustainability and focus in line with mine, and then equally understanding, okay, well, I have to make a wage. So I think one of the interesting places actually where that intersects with my own work is, I think kind of mentioned, I work in a fisheries port in Killybegs in Donegal. I work as a marine mammal observer. So basically my job is not necessarily fisheries related, it's more to do with marine construction. And one of the things I found really hard watching that movie is obviously again seeing all fisheries tarred with the same brush. So if you don't work, I think if you don't necessarily work in a coastal town with industry, or you don't have a job which involves what I would call just large scale industry, you probably never see it. And I think sometimes the scale can be shocking for people, and it's only when you see it that you really get an idea, because it's hard to explain to someone, oh, there was a super trawler in the bay today and it was so big it couldn't come into port. And this is a port with hundreds of boats, and this is hundreds of relatively big boats. So the one super trawler was so massive, it basically had to block up half of the inlet into the town. But unless you see that and go, okay, that's about 25 hotels big, it's really, really hard to say. Whereas, so when you see that, and then you're hearing all fishers are bad, and then I'm on the dock day in, day out, 12 hours a day, rain or shine, and I'm interacting every day with local fishermen who are, you know, like we've talked about, generations of of fishers who have an interest in the sustainability of their stock, who just down the road have an entire business that its job is to mend nets, because they are making sure that their gear is in good condition. They are making sure they don't lose their gear, and they're reusing it as much as possible and mending it all the time. And to also see them helping me. So a lot of my work involves doing seal rescues. I would say a lot, no, most of it involves standing in the rain, but some of it involves doing seal rescues, seagull rescues, things like that. And it is those fishermen taking time out of their very busy day to come and help me, you know, chase a pup around the dock while they should maybe be unloading something. So they have care for their marine environment. They really, really do. So I just think, yeah, I just think it's a hard one when you're looking at a whole industry and then just saying, okay, this whole industry is bad. Obviously, if you know who the director of the movie was, I think the other movie he made was Cowspiracy. So I understand he has an agenda as someone who is vegan to encourage that lifestyle. And I'm not saying that that's bad. It's just when you promote your agenda as absolute fact, I think that's unfair and unfair to viewers. And I guess as well, kind of talking about that kind of racial bias with how they looked at Asia predominantly, and then didn't either cover any of the good things that they're doing there. Was just that kind of privileged activism. To say that the entire world should just stop eating fish now is to cut out the livelihood of 250 million people or something like that, and then the primary protein source for massive swaths of the world, which is just ridiculous. So yes, okay, we could take ourselves as Europe or Irish people as an example and say, okay, if I go to Super Value in Lidl, which is what's in my town, and if I buy a predominantly plant-based and vegetable diet, not counting like weird proteins or anything like that, just simple, yes, it will be a lot cheaper than if I bought fish or meat. That is not the case in many places. So I think we just have to be aware of that too. Sorry, Connor, do you have any questions?
No, thanks for that. And I'm glad you brought up the piece around who's behind the documentary, because that's always so important, because it's as you said, it's one vision. And the fact that, you know, it's the same guys that did Cowspiracy and so on. And yes, you know, vegan and plant-based diets is a huge growth area. But exactly what you said, to end the documentary saying that the answer is to no longer eat fish, yeah. It kind of took, for me, it kind of took the whole documentary as just not being real, because how can you turn around and say that? You know, how can you just say, oh guys, you know, like Cowspiracy, everyone stop eating meat, and you know, and everyone stop eating fish. And we know with the work we do, Manifesto and so on, we know there's parts of the globe that need to increase animal proteins. You know what I mean? It's all about geographically where you are and what you do. And I think it's so important that you hit the nail on the head. It really is, as he said himself in the documentary, follow the money. Well, follow the money back to the documentary as well. You know what I mean?
Well, and also the one thing that really irked me at the end, like, and it's not to say I don't buy it too. Like, I'm a big fan of a Lyndon McCartney sausage, because not only is it, you know, it's plant-based, but it also comes in cardboard, so grapes, no plastic, plants, and it's something I didn't have to cook from scratch. But there was a piece at the end that was like, it felt like an ad for the weird fake prawns. And it was like to tell people to not eat fish and then to go eat a plastic packaged alternative was just like, oh, come on. Like, that's an ad. What was that? Yeah, that was ridiculous.
Absolutely. I know, you're right. Absolutely. And I think that's why I'm so glad you could join us today, to show a spotlight on Cowspiracy, because you see the social media talking about, and people, as someone said here earlier, because we're in Ireland anyway, we're still in lockdown, people are still at home, they have more time to watch documentaries and take this in, and people take documentaries as fact.
Yeah.
And
there's nothing that's telling you not to, and I feel like back in the day, because my dad actually used to make documentaries when I was younger, to do it far more mad things than science, but I saw, you know, the kind of the process, and he did approach it in what I would say is almost the scientific method. Like, what was the question? Okay, then this is the method, and then what was the answer we were looking for? But even he himself could never be completely unobjective, especially if, like, you know, the person you're interviewing is unpleasant, then you can't help but have a bias to get, you know, that kind of stuff. It's just an editing and all of that. So yeah, it's not the same. A documentary is not a scientific paper, basically.
Absolutely.
Scientific paper's more boring.
But I think, am I right in saying, and it's like we spoke about earlier with Niall as well, personally for me as a chef, I think if we spend as much time concentrating on the oceans as we do on the land, I can tell you where all my vegetables come from. I can tell you where our meat is reared and how it's fed and so on. Can I tell you where last night's catch came from that's in a restaurant today? 90% of chefs can't. And I think it is back to paying attention. And as you said, it's a small fisherman. And I'm from a fishery town that is no longer a fishery town in Ireland, where growing up as a kid was 50 to 80 trawlers. There's now 2 fishing boats, and generations have lost that. Generations of skippers have gone. And I think I'm right in saying, I presume, that it's back to promotion and working with small fishermen that are fishing sustainably,
And also even like on what you were saying about kind of people diversifying what they eat. I mean, even the simplest version of that is like, do you eat shellfish? And I feel like a lot of people don't. So like, near me locally, I have a friend who has a restaurant, her husband is an oyster farmer. Like, that is a beautiful, clean industry. He's got his trestles. We're looking at something that's fast growing, fast reproducing. It's a filter feeder. I've toured some, I can't remember the name of it now, but a mussel processing factory in Cork, and I was just so impressed, like from how they're grown to how they're processed to how they're like really safely cleaned with UV lights before they're going out to the consumer. And I think that's something, like I think we also touched on the Netherlands. My husband's from the Netherlands, and like their family, they love mussels. Like that's a treat. You sit down, mussels for dinner, but it's still, I even think as well, it's one of the things that you'll get in a supermarket in Ireland, and you will look at the bag and it will tell you where in Ireland it's from. So it's like, okay, you want an easy, affordable, kind of sound like a spokesperson for shellfish industry. I'm not paid by the shellfish industry, but you're like, it's affordable. It's like €3 or €4. It's a big bag. It'll feed 2 people. It was caught relatively locally. If you get it from the counter, you could maybe get it put in a Tupperware. You don't have to have it in the plastic net. It's an easy start. Anyway.
No, absolutely. And I think like it's back to, for me, it's back to letting chefs know the power they have to make a change.
Yeah.
They spend money, they have a purse of money where they buy ingredients to put on their menus, to sell and so on. And the important part is be responsible. Yeah. Be responsible just as much as the oceans are as you are on land. And I really think that sums it up.
And I'm sure someone maybe took, sorry, because I wasn't here yesterday. I mean, one of the other, because it also goes back to price, like when we're going out and we're eating something lovely in a restaurant, then it is great to get in the habit of going, okay, well, I can pay that bit more for that good fish. But if you are thinking, okay, on my day-to-day basis, and I want that ocean flavor, it is, I guess, encouraging people to get seaweed into their diet in a kind of a more, not just in Japanese cuisine way. Like, it is cool to kind of look into the history of the Irish and Welsh, I guess, yeah, lineage of eating seaweeds in a way that I guess has been lost in the last 100 years or so. But I know there are a lot of people kind of looking at it now, but I still find when I talk to people, I'm like, why don't you just put it in a salad? They're like, what do you mean in a salad? It only goes in ramen. You're like, no, it goes in lots of other things.
Yes, absolutely. And we had a great talk yesterday on seaweed from a guy involved in the FAO and the UN and everything around the work on seaweed. And again, our talk was about for chefs to be more aware of this superfood and natural. So, okay, I'm lucky. I'm on the East Coast. I'm in Wexford. I go 5 minutes to the beach here, and pick up rocks and oceans, and the tide goes out. Not everyone can do that, but it's available. It's there. It's a superfood. It's got a big history in Ireland. And thank you so much. I know how busy you are, and we could talk all day because it's such an interesting topic, and I'm so happy that your voice was here today to kind of put a totally different stand on Seaspiracy, because to me, yes, I watched it and I watched it a second time. It didn't sit well with me because exactly with the points you've made, you can hang on. This is very one vision. It's dealing with stop eating fish. Yeah. The planet. And you see these T-shirts coming out saying that. I just thought that's not the answer.
Yeah. And then exactly, I think what kind of Grace touched on as well is then to have people turning around to her being like, why are you doing more? You're like, I've been doing this for 30 years.
Yes.
Like, and that was a question I was getting a lot. I was like, why aren't people talking about this? I was like, I've been talking about this for 10 years, just nobody was listening.
Absolutely. And now all of a sudden, because of Netflix, it's out there. And
Yeah.
like you said, people think this has just happened. You've been talking about 10 years ago. You studied this 10 years ago, and you know it's happening then and before then. Thank you so much. Your time is so valuable. I'm delighted to have you on board. And we're going to move on to our next. We're running a little bit over, but we're going to move on to our.
Yeah, you'll be okay.
Yes, it is. It's fine. It's such
Thanks,
a
so eye-opener, and it's good to see another point of view on conspiracy. Like as you said, the documentary is not a science paper. And you were just talking a few minutes ago about is the chef's choice, and there we're going to meet two chefs who are making lots of the right choices in their work every day. So first, we're going to I'm going to welcome Philip. Philip, are you there? You want to unmute and yeah.
Hello, GB. Hello, Connor. Hello, everybody.
How are you doing? You're a bit upside down there. Perfect.
Yeah, here we go. That's okay.
Everybody want to meet Philip. Philip is executive chef in Ashford-Castle. For the little story, Philip is a very inspiring chef. He inspired me 20 years ago. It was my first head chef in Ireland. So yeah, 20 years ago, yeah.
Stop! You're going to make me cry.
Down to Cork, and I got inspired, and that drove me what I'm doing now, like really. So I want just to bring you your experience into the conversation, like really. So first, we're going to show you a little bit of your cooking skills. You pre-recorded a little video on the last few days there. Would you just talk to us a little bit of your recipe there?
We can do that. We can try anyway. So you want me to try to speak about it now, Dilly?
Yeah, just a little bit. Just introduce your recipe.
So on this, you know, for the last an hour since 11 o'clock, I'm listening everybody today. And it's few things who came back from many people is the season of the fish, which is extremely important. Understand the season, understand how we fish also from the small fisherman to the big dragging boat around the coast of Ireland. And the fish I picked a couple days ago for you, it was the lobster. One, because the lobster is sustainable for the way. Is no dragging. The lobster goes in his cage. It's picked up by the small boat under 12 meters from the fisherman, and is probably one of the most beautiful products we can find in Ireland. One of them anyway. Then I decided to go with egg, and why egg? Even because it's a full season of eggs now, from February to we say July, August. And I think it's very important. We're speaking about the season of the fish as same as we are speaking about the season of the fresh peas from our garden. When I bought the fish on Friday, for the quick story, I've also the fishmonger. I've never been before. So I go to the fishmonger and I saw mackerel on the counter. And as you know, mackerel season starts in September. So I look the guy, I say, where are your mackerels coming from? And the fishmonger told me it's coming from the lorry. And I looked the man, and I didn't know what to do, to be honest. And that is unfortunately what can happen sometime when you go to the wrong people. And we spoke about it. Some people spoke about it before me. We need to go to the right people. We need to understand what's happening on the season of the fish, same as for the land. And so that is the reason I pick up the heck. And then I do some little smoked haddock. And the smoked haddock I did coming from the north of Atlantic. From a sustainable farm, and it's been smoked by Sally Byrne, which is an unbelievable woman who smokes the fish the right way, no dye, completely clean, and that is, I think, is very important. So what I was trying to do here maybe was to have 3 different ways of people doing a right thing as an artisan producer, get the seasonality, and obviously our seafood from the coast, which could have been oyster also, obviously, oyster or mussel, and I know Phil speak about mussel. I'm living near the Connemara, so I have the fjord here. We are doing the blue mussel, absolutely unbelievable product, and we are very lucky in that sense to have that here, you know.
So we're going to play your video for everybody watching. Feel free to ask some questions in the Q&A during the video, and Philippe, you could answer a few questions during the time.
Of course.
All right. Barbara, to you then.
Bonjour mes amis. So welcome to Chef Manifesto. And I'm going to cook something very, very simple. First of all, I got some rhubarb from my garden. Then I just peel. And I kept some of the peelings, okay? Thinking of waste. I got some lovely wild garlic. And little of the flower as well. Beautiful. We're going to have some of the my preserved lemons. Speaking of sustainable, one beautiful supplier, Kilkenny, rainbow trout eggs, absolutely fantastic. That is beautiful. Bit of kimchi. And tonight, because it's very, very important, is seasonality of the fish. The season is very, very important. So we're going to have egg, okay, egg on haddock. So the haddock is smoked haddock coming from North Atlantic, which is very, very important because over there is sustainable and we can speak about it. And this one is being smoked, absolutely, and you see, no dye, very natural, Sally burn, unbelievable smoker. So fresh egg, and also say something which is very sustainable is our lobster in Ireland. It's not dry, they go in a cage, it's fantastic. So we will speak about it later anyway. But for tonight, so we're going to do, sorry, for the lunch, we're going to do a nice rhubarb beurre blanc. And why rhubarb beurre blanc? Very simple. I didn't want to use a fresh lemon now, okay? And the rhubarb has all this acidity, as the beurre blanc is beautiful. Beurre blanc type, okay? But what we're going to do is a white wine, a shallot, that's it. White wine, shallot. We're going to reduce down. Get more shallot, and we're going to keep the shallot in the sauce because the shallot is going to confit. I'm going to add a little sugar, okay, just to balance the acidity of the sauce. You see, I thin, very thin shallot, very important because we're going to keep in the sauce. That's it. Very simple. I'm going to add a little bit of brown sugar. That's it. Not too much. We're going to add the fresh rhubarb from the garden. We're going to infuse all that. Beautiful. And I'm going to add the skin here because I want to confit the skin. Because when it's cooking a beurre blanc, nice and slowly, it's beautiful to eat. And as well, it adds some colors to the dish. Okay? That's it. I'm going to add just a pinch of water. If you have some fish stock, even better. That's it. And we're going to reduce that down. And when you reduce down by a third, Monte butter, and you have your beurre blanc. Okay? A little bit of cracked pepper. That's it. Love the smell of the cracked pepper. Beautiful. That is our sauce. As a garnish, I'm going to my spinach with wild garlic. Absolutely beautiful. And I will garnish a little bit with the flower on the top. Fantastic. I'm going to have that now. Look at that now. I'm not going to show that, but I will have some potatoes. We have to stay rich, isn't it? And the lobster being cooked, when I got it, it was 700 grams. So it takes about 8 minutes to cook, okay? And as you cook, it's still not fully cooked, okay? I never fully cook, because after I'm going to eat it very, very nice and slowly. And also I'm going to use the raw in the sauce. No waste, okay? Very important. That's it. It will be a nice color. And that's it. Okay, I'm going to take some of my lemon now. Beautiful. With the spinach and the fish. Beautiful. That's it. I want to fry that. Yeah. Olive oil, of course, always, no change. That here, my lovely eggs. Okay, absolutely fantastic supplier in Ireland. And we need some garlic. Very little, because I'm going to chop this one here anyway, to go with it. That's it. Fork. And that is going to, for my spinach. That's it. There's come here, very, very slowly, and the fork. That's it, you can see. It's reducing down, nice and slowly. And the spinach are organic, okay? Pretty much all my veg now are organic or from my garden. Very important also. Thank you, Mother Nature. That's it. my white garlic. My little lemon. What is lovely is going to have some crunchiness when you have your spinach and going to be, oh, what is that? It's your lemon, okay? Preserved lemon. Just in a salt for a few months now. Okay? There we go. We're going to leave that like that. Very, very simple. If I get the right lid, much easier. Here we go. Okay. That is absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. My fish and my kimchi. Butter. There we go. So monter butter. More butter. Okay, you see, very soft butter. And we monte, nice and slowly. Very simple. I love it. There we go. And here. Very nice. Can have all the smell of the smoke, the lobster, lovely egg. That's it. Look at that. Salt and pepper. Exactly like making a lemon bourbon, but using rhubarb. Much nicer. There we go. We wouldn't be Irish with no potatoes, not possible. And then kimchi. Here we go. Kimchi smoked haddock, your egg with sea trout eggs, some kikini, and your lovely lobster with the spinach, wild garlic, and preserved lemon. Thank you very much. Take care, guys.
Philippe, thank you for that. Absolutely. And one thing I always think is when someone's cooking and explaining food in a French accent, automatically it seems to taste better.
Yeah, I saw the word sexist coming a few times, yes.
No, and thank you for that. Absolutely fabulous. And we're going to talk in a minute. I also want to bring in Aisling Moore as well for the conversation. So,
yeah.
So because we're going to get, there's yourself, myself, JB and Aisling to talk about, from a chef's point of view, everything that's going on. And a quick introductory to Aisling. So Aisling is the head chef in Goldie's in Cork. It's a 100% seafood fish restaurant. She has huge amount of accolades to her name. Chef of the Year with John and Sally McKenna. Just been awarded a big gourmand from Michelin. And I think it's fabulous to hear from her in a way that, to me, she's the new generation, the fresh blood of chefs coming in the industry. You and me, Philippe, and kind of JB are the old guns.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah.
Just being honest, and I think the interesting part is that not you and me and JB, but our generation chefs have kind of almost made a mess of things in terms of how years ago food was sourced, and especially seafood and so on, as we spoke about with Niall earlier. And I think it's really interesting to have Aisling's voice involved in this as well, of how does she run Goldie's, 100% seafood, fish, sustainably, and how does all that work as well? Is Aisling there? Can she come in?
Yeah. She's
there, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. It's coming in.
Sorry.
Were you trying out Philip's recipe, maybe?
I'm unmuted. I just can't get my camera.
Or maybe Laura might be able to.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah,
Hello, Ashley.
I was just recording Felipe, his recipe there, so sorry.
So guys, I think
Funny.
Ashley, to start with you first, because obviously Goldie's is closed at the moment. I know you're doing takeaway boxes and so on. But explain to us how you managed to run a really cool, really, the accolades speak for themselves, fantastic food based on fish and seafood, and what great lengths you come up with, and how have you worked it to find and source such great in-season fresh fish?
Yeah, thank you. It's definitely been a challenge. We opened September 2019, so we've only kind of had 9 months of trading. But we've had lots of downtime, obviously, between opening and closing. So that's been great to reflect and kind of figure out our systems, how we buy things, when we buy, and how much of things we buy. So we use what we call a whole catch approach. So basically, what the fishermen have dictates our menu. So we don't ever ask for turbot or monkfish or whatever. If it's there, we'll take it and we're delighted, but we're also really happy to take, fish like megrim, witch, ling, gurnard, whatever. So on a week-to-week basis, let's say we could use maybe 100 kilos of fish, depending on how busy we are, etc. So that varies every week what we get in. So our menu is dictated around that. So let's say 1 week, I know we got like 50 kilos of crab, just because that's what that particular fisherman had. So we had a crab snack on, a crab starter, a crab main course. We nearly put crab in the dessert. So we're just about using as much of the fish as possible and the whole fish. So kind of approaching fish like meat, in the fact that, when we buy beef or pork, us the chefs were really good at saying, yeah, let's use the whole pig, let's use the head, let's use the tails, let's use the trotters. That wasn't really happening with fish. And I think, we should respect fish as a whole animal. It doesn't seem to be, people don't think of it the same way, but it's a life as well. So we're working really hard to be able to use as much of the fish as possible. I mean, traditionally, with most whole fish, you'll probably only get a 50 to 60% yield. So we're just trying to increase the yield every single time.
I love that entire approach, because I think that's where I've been saying for yesterday and today, where chefs need to step up and spend that much time and attention to our seafood as we do to our meat proteins and vegetable proteins and so on and so forth. And in terms of your sourcing then, how have you found, I presume you're working with local fishing boats coming in, and like the same question we talked to Niall about previously as well, how have you found the response to it? Because they do tend to get a bad name, which they shouldn't do, because these small scale fishermen have generations of fishing sustainably. How have you worked with them? They tell you this is what we're landing, and
yeah, well, to be honest, sometimes I don't even know until it gets to the restaurant. So it could come in the restaurant at maybe 9:30 in the morning, and then we're probably don't write our menu till about 4 o'clock by the time we open. So yeah, I think it's obviously, when you're building a relationship with anyone, it's based on trust and respect, of course. And I think, we see lots of farmers and growers in the limelight or on social media and in press. We don't really seem to see the same with fishermen. I think that's part of the problem. We don't have a face to the product like we might with a really fantastically grown potato or fantastic Irish beef. So I think that's been really important to us, to be able to learn more about what fishermen do, but also respect the product and to be willing to pay the right price for the product. Like what Niall was saying earlier, I think that's really important. And yeah, we'd have a very high labor cost because we buy everything in whole. But we think we can justify that with the product and the quality that we serve to our customers.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And the fact that you're using fish, you're not wasting your money. You're not throwing money in the bin. So kind of the extra pays for itself.
100%. And I think as chefs, when we're buying ingredients, we should be really aware of the whole process of that. So if you're going to put fillet steak on the menu and you're going to order 60 fillet steaks every week, well, like what's happening with the rest of that cow? So that's the approach we're taking with fish. So we want to buy the fish in whole because we want to take responsibility for the whole fish. So whether that's finding out ways to use the heads or the collars or the cheeks or the roe or the spleen, we try to use as much as we can. And like we're nowhere near where we want to be yet, but we're very excited to get there. However, it might take 10 years, 15 years, we don't care.
Oh, it's brilliant. I can't wait when we are back open. A whole lot to get down to, you know. And Philippe, so you're, I mean, you know, we've introduced you already from you know, Ashford Castle and the luxury that is. You know, it's one of the best hotels in the world and has been voted one of the best hotels in the world. And explain more, Philippe, about your philosophy and so on. I know about it, but you're very much ingredients led and season led as well. Fish
listen, for the fish, it's very much the same approach as Ashlyn on what I heard about it today is the season is extremely important. The relationship with your fishmonger and is also extremely important, is a key basically, because our protein, our fish protein change due to what is available on the market. But not also what is only available on the market, what also I know is in season. So as I say, I'm not going to buy mackerel now in March, where I know it's not the best season of the mackerel. So we have, as a chef, responsibility to understand the season, to understand what's coming on the boat. And Ashlyn said something very true here. The people, as a chef, we are willing to pay €32 for a fillet steak, okay? But people are not willing to pay €32 to get the beautiful cod. So for the fishmonger is also a very challenging situation when they get their fish, they're able to sell it to a good price. The chefs are not willing yet to buy the good price, which is unfortunate. And obviously that's going to change with time to let them be able for the sustainability for the fish to grow more, to get a better quality of fish, which is very important. So they won't have to go not when it's not the right time, but only when it's a good time. And that is important. So as a chef, I think Ashlyn put it the point here very, very perfectly, is we need to buy what is available on the market. But also, I said before, I do believe it's important to support aquaculture. And what I mean by aquaculture, I'm working with a supplier, Connor on GB. You may know my Mongo bean, Mongo seaweeds. We are doing beautiful seaweeds, abalone, sea urchin. We are working in Ireland with beautiful oysters, you know, from all around the country with different flavors of oysters. We are lucky to have lobsters. And it's important, and obviously organic salmon, and I saw somebody spoke about organic salmon from Clare Island. And it's important also to support aquaculture and to give them a chance to grow and be better. Now for the organic salmons coming from Clare Island, is only 1% of fish in 99% of water. So the fish has a very good way to grow and to get better. The feeding is 100% organic, which is very, very important. And I think as a chef, it's also important to support and to help them to understand their product and have a better product and speak to them about it. And it's only by having this relationship with the fishmonger, with a small boat, then we can progress and involve and get better at it, you know.
Oh, absolutely. JB, have you anything to add on to that?
No, not really. Like, I mean, you both very inspiring chef and really leading the way in two different fields, really, like, because when we see a restaurants or big hotels, people have a different demands sometimes as such, like, and arriving to Ashford Castle, maybe they just expect to see to have both monkfish and lobster, and that's it.
And they do this. Listen, GB, they do, of course, but I do Gunnar also. But you know what is very, very important. But is, as you know, is teaching your guests, is teaching your kids. Is all about that, and it's important. The reason is important for us to have maybe a salmon, we know it's organic and it's aquaculture, but also to have a gunner on the side. So people at least have a choice, and the gunner can be just a pre-starter or snack, but at least they understand the taste. They start to have a knowledge. And when they go after to Ashley restaurant and say, oh, I saw gunner in this restaurant, I'm going to have gunner today. And that is our duty here, you know?
That's exactly what the Chef's Manifesto is, when we as chefs setting the trends and bring back education on people's plates, really. And so thanks million, Ashling, thanks million, Philippe. Just very, very inspiring. And
absolutely.
The fight goes strong.
It's been brilliant, and it's been really eye-opening. And the last 2 days, we could go on forever. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
I certainly feel inspired. I'm 30 years doing this, and I'm still learning every day. And the last 2 days has proven that as well. And it's been absolutely brilliant. And I want to make sure that a big thanks to Laura, who's in the background from GIY.
Amazing job, Laura.
Well, Laura organised the whole thing. Me and JB had to show up, to be honest with you. Amazing amount of work. And Barbara as well from the SCG Advocacy Hub, who out. It's just, but we will have, there's lots more going on, guys. Like for the Chef's Manifesto, myself and JB are putting our ticket caps on straight after this. We have more webinars later.
Yeah. We have all meetings organized all next week to organize the next ones and stuff. So yeah, lots going on. We just follow the Facebook groups. So there's the Chef's Manifesto Facebook group. There's the Chef's Manifesto Island Facebook group. And if you want to be part of our group of discussions on WhatsApp and stuff, just contact us.
Absolutely. And follow the Chef's Manifesto on Instagram as well, and the Chef's Manifesto website. Well, obviously myself and JB are concentrating with GIY on Ireland. There's global talks, very like the exact same as this, that go on throughout 80 countries with the Chef's Manifesto. So look out for these webinars. They're inspiring, they're eye-opening, and they really, in a lot of cases, talk about what needs to be spoken about. You know what I mean? What needs to be put out there for people to hear. Yeah, we're just over time. That's great. It's been amazing. It really has. And guys, everyone's time, you know, we're so appreciative of everyone's time. Everyone is so busy, and we could talk forever on it.
We had to cut it to 2 days really, but we could have lasted weeks and weeks and weeks on the conversation. Absolutely. And hopefully to see you all for the next conversation going on.
Yeah, and I urge you, especially the chefs I know that are here today, join up with the Chef's Manifesto. It's such a huge community across 80 countries that share all this knowledge around sustainability and a better food system. And that's really what it's focused on, and having these discussions with different voices and different NGOs and different people that are involved in the industry. So that we get a very level and a very open-minded conversations around our food systems, which is so important, you know. So yeah, thank you to everybody. It's been terrific.
Thank you for having us anyway.
Thank you very much.
And for that, it was fantastic.
Brilliant, and hope to speak to you all again soon. Thank you.
All right.
Cheers, guys. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. See you next time.